I still remember the first morning I came face to face with Karen. A brisk Saturday at the mailbox, the sun barely up. My son, Jake, was excitedly telling me about his new bike route, and I was retrieving an envelope labeled HOA warning. That was my first red flag. My husband Tim and I had moved in only 3 weeks prior. Karen was there in her immaculate yard, standing with arms folded, her posture as rigid as the pastel blazer she wore. The moment she saw us, her eyes narrowed. "Are you the new owners of 128 Maple Lane?" she asked, voice dripping with suspicion. I nodded, a polite smile on my face. "Yes, we just moved from out of state. We love the neighborhood." She cut me off, thrusting out a piece of paper. "Your recycling bin was an inch too close to the curb. This is a violation." I stared at the paper, a formal complaint from the Maplewood Homeowners Association. She pointed at the crumpled letter in my hand. "You'll be fined if you don't fix it." Something in my gut twisted. This wasn't a warm welcome. I glanced at Jake, who looked confused. Tim, stepping out to see what was going on, gave me a look that said it all. We're not in for an easy ride. We'd picked Maplewood because it boasted wide sidewalks, friendly block parties, and top-rated schools. Online photos showed neighbors chatting like old friends, kids playing tag in manicured yards. Yet, we quickly learned appearances could be deceiving. Despite the glossy brochures, Maplewood had an undercurrent of tension, like something was off. A few residents waved politely, but they never lingered for conversation. Others seemed downright jumpy, rushing inside when Karen popped around the corner. We chalked it up to typical suburban cliques, but we soon realized Karen held everyone in a vice grip of HOA rules. We discovered letters from the HOA almost daily. A smudge on our front window, grass a shade too tall, kids' chalk drawings on the driveway. Every note was topped with Karen's neat signature, head of the HOA. It turned out she wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She practically ran the entire association, and by extension, the neighborhood. Tim tried to reason with her at first, politely pointing out that we needed time to settle in before everything was perfect. But each conversation was the same. She'd flash a tight-lipped smile and say, "Rules are rules," with her eyes daring us to argue. We started feeling the invisible walls closing in. It was the following weekend when the real battle lines were drawn. Jake turned 10, and we invited a handful of friends over for a small backyard barbecue. Our yard was big enough for a bounce house, plus a little area where kids could play water balloon toss. Karen showed up just as Tim was flipping burgers on the grill. The kids were laughing and squealing, water balloons bursting midair. At first, I assumed she wanted to join the fun, or at least say hello. But the moment she marched across the lawn, I could see this was far from a friendly visit. "You didn't request an event permit," she announced, voice slicing through the children's laughter. HOA regulations require written approval for gatherings over 8 people. My stomach dropped. "We're just celebrating Jake's birthday," I said, forcing calm. "We didn't realize we needed special permission." She clicked her tongue. "Chapter 4, Section 12 of the HOA manual. You'll be fined, and if I see any issues, noise, trash, property damage, I won't hesitate to escalate this." Jake stood behind me, eyes wide. His party was being threatened by a single-page regulation. Tim clenched the spatula. Karen held her ground like a general on the front lines. So much for neighborly warmth. That night, while cleaning up after the party, Tim and I scrolled through Maplewood's online HOA portal. We wanted to see what we'd done wrong. The website was endless. Pages of guidelines about fence heights, color palettes for front doors, permissible shrubs, car parking angles, even the types of decorations allowed during holidays. The more we read, the more stifled we felt. There was even a rule about the decibel level allowed for lawnmowers before 9 a.m. on weekends. No wonder the neighbors all seemed tense. Karen's rules gave her absolute power to cite anyone for nearly anything. We reached out to a few families who had lived here longer, hoping they might reassure us that Karen wasn't as strict as she seemed. Their responses, however, were tinged with caution. "She's the HOA head. She can make your life miserable." We tried fighting her once. Our permit for a garage remodel mysteriously got delayed for 6 months. My child's treehouse was forced down after she said it didn't meet safety standards. It dawned on us that Karen didn't just follow guidelines, she enforced them with an iron fist. and everyone was too afraid of her influence to push back. We realized that if we wanted peace, we'd have to stand our ground. Tim and I agreed we wouldn't be doormats. Sure, we didn't want a war, but we also didn't intend to live under Karen's dictatorship. We started making small, calculated pushes against her stifling rules. First, we let Jake's sidewalk chalk drawings remain on the driveway for 2 extra days, just to see her reaction. Next, we parked our car a few inches beyond the official line in front of our home, not enough to violate safety codes but enough to test her. We replaced our porch light with a slightly different style than the approved fixture list. A day passed, then 2. No immediate blowback. But on day 3, the letters began. A formal note about the chalk, a notice about our car, a reminder about only HOA-approved fixtures. Each was signed in that same, neatly looping signature. Karen was busy. Our defiance, however small, sent a message. We wouldn't cower. And for a fleeting moment, it felt good to push back. But we also sensed the tension escalating. Karen saw us as a challenge to her authority. And while we bristled at every new fine or warning, we also realized we were dancing on thin ice. We just didn't know how treacherous it was about to become. The real bombshell dropped on a sweltering Wednesday afternoon. We were reading the latest stack of HOA letters, half of them petty warnings about unauthorized doormats or noise from children. Then we spotted a new document pinned beneath them. An official eviction notice from the Maplewood HOA board. My heart pounded as I read the words, "Your repeated violations of HOA regulations have resulted in a motion to remove you from the community. You have 14 days to comply or vacate." Tim stared, stunned. Can they do that? I'd heard horror stories about certain HOAs that held near absolute power. Could Maplewood's bylaws allow them to force out homeowners? I frantically flipped through the fine print. The notice cited an obscure clause allowing the HOA to pursue eviction if a homeowner willfully and repeatedly ignores critical regulations. Jake wandered into the kitchen. Sensing our panic, he asked, "Is something wrong?" I forced a shaky smile and ushered him out gently. Meanwhile, Tim's expression was thunderous. "She's taking this too far," he growled. "We need a lawyer or some serious leverage because this is insane." Karen's mission was clear. She wanted us gone. And apparently, she wasn't playing games. We wasted no time contacting a local attorney, Regina Moore, specialized in real estate and HOA disputes. Over the phone, Regina's tone was calm, yet concerned. Maplewood has a reputation for stringent enforcement, but an outright eviction is rare. Let's meet to discuss your options. We set an appointment for the next morning. By 9 a.m., we sat in Regina's tastefully decorated office, flipping through a binder of Maplewood's official documents. She explained the complexities of HOA law, how associations often have a surprising amount of legal backing, but that their powers aren't limitless. "The key question," Regina said, tapping the eviction notice, "is whether you truly violated critical regulations or if Karen is twisting minor infractions." "Minor," Tim echoed. "We're talking about chalk drawings and a different porch light. That's hardly critical." Regina nodded, penning notes. "Then we'll argue it's harassment and an abuse of authority, possibly selective enforcement, but we need more evidence, patterns of Karen targeting families or bending rules to punish them." She handed us a checklist. Gather letters, record interactions, note any witness accounts. The more details, the stronger our case. Walking out, we felt a glimmer of hope. Karen might have met her match in Regina, but a part of me wondered if she'd escalate even more. Buoyed by Regina's advice, we decided to collect testimonies from our neighbors. If we could prove Karen abused her HOA power systematically, we might undermine her eviction attempt. We knocked on doors, carefully explaining we were fighting the eviction notice. Some neighbors looked panicked, worried Karen would retaliate, but slowly stories trickled out. A sweet elderly couple recalled how Karen pounced on them for having an unapproved ramp for the husband's wheelchair. Another neighbor's dog exceeded the HOA weight limit by a mere pound, leading to fines. A single mother tearfully recounted being threatened with a lien on her house because her teenage son's basketball hoop blocked the sidewalk. Each story painted a grim pattern of petty tyranny. But few wanted to speak on record. "We can't risk making her angry," they said. "We can't afford to move." I felt my frustration mount. Karen's intimidation was so pervasive that even though the entire neighborhood was quietly seething, no one dared stand up. It was like we had to fight a monster alone, but we documented every tale we could, even if names were withheld. This was evidence. Evidence that Karen's dictatorship had gone too far. Late one night, as Tim and I reviewed our notes, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I picked up hesitantly. "Hello?" A quiet voice answered. "You don't know me, but I heard you're collecting info on Karen. I might have something big." I perked up. "Who is this?" "My name isn't important right now," the voice said, clearly nervous. "I work with the Maplewood Finance Committee. Karen's been manipulating the HOA budget. If you can promise anonymity, I'll show you records that could get her removed, but you can't reveal I helped you." My heart thumped. This was the break we needed. "We'll protect your identity," I assured. "When can we meet?" We set a discreet meeting for the next night in a parking lot behind a local grocery store. It felt clandestine, like something out of a spy movie. But if Karen was siphoning HOA funds or mismanaging them, it could blow the lid off her entire reign. Tim and I exchanged wide-eyed glances. Was this about to become more than a petty eviction fight? If Karen was guilty of financial misconduct, her house of cards might collapse. The next evening, we met our secret informant, a slim, middle-aged woman with anxious eyes. She handed over a flash drive. "Everything's in there. Audits, transaction logs, suspicious invoice entries. Karen authorizes payments to shell companies for maintenance that never happens." Tim and I listened, stunned. "This is serious," he murmured, scanning the files on a laptop we'd brought. Sure enough, the records showed multiple transactions funneling HOA funds to questionable vendors with no clear services provided. Our informant explained, "Karen's the only one with direct oversight. Anyone who questions her is shut down or threatened. I tried once. She threatened to have me removed from the finance committee for ethical violations. I caved. But now, seeing her evict families, enough is enough." My pulse pounded. This wasn't just about chalk drawings or a bigger dog. Karen was using Maplewood's funds like her personal piggy bank. "Why not go straight to the police or city officials?" I asked. She shook her head. "I'm afraid of the blowback. I needed an outsider who's already at war with her. You have reason to expose her." We promised to keep her identity hidden. As she disappeared into the night, Tim and I realized we had a bombshell that could reshape the entire HOA battle. Armed with the flash drive, we rushed to Regina's office the next morning. She examined the files, eyebrows shooting up in disbelief. "Wow, if this is legit, Karen's not just overstepping, she's committing fraud." She outlined 2 approaches. 1, use it in our eviction defense. Argue that the HOA's action is invalid because the head is implicated in financial misconduct. Approach 2, go public or involve law enforcement. Potentially remove Karen from power, nullifying her eviction attempt altogether. We weighed the risks. Going public meant a huge scandal. The entire neighborhood would be rocked, property values could be affected, and we could be painted as troublemakers. But if we stayed quiet, the eviction hearing might proceed and we could still lose our home. "I think we have no choice," Tim said grimly. "Karen's not playing fair, so why should we?" Regina nodded. "It's a matter of timing. We can file an injunction to freeze the eviction due to probable misconduct. Then, if necessary, we'll contact local authorities." I let out a slow breath. This was big. We'd basically be dropping a grenade on Maplewood. But after everything she'd done, we believed it was the only way to protect our family and everyone else under her thumb. The stress was relentless. We submitted the evidence to the county clerk alongside our official rebuttal to the eviction. News traveled fast. Within days, gossip circulated around Maplewood. "Did you hear the new family is accusing Karen of embezzlement?" Some believed us. Others, loyal to Karen, scoffed. Meanwhile, we spotted her strolling the neighborhood with that usual smugness, yet occasionally I caught glimpses of tension in her eyes. She knew something was brewing. Then, the phone calls started. Angry messages from Karen. "You have no idea what you're doing," she hissed in a voicemail. "These lies will ruin your reputation. Drop this, or you'll regret it." Tim and I tried to stay calm, but each day felt like a powder keg. Jake asked why everyone was acting strange. We just told him it was a grown-up issue, and we hoped it'd blow over. But blow over it did not. Instead, we received official notice that the HOA would hold a special meeting in 2 weeks to address allegations against leadership. Karen was calling a gathering of all homeowners, likely to publicly denounce us. We braced ourselves for a showdown in front of the entire neighborhood. The evening of the meeting, Maplewoods Community Center was packed. Residents squeezed into folding chairs, voices buzzing with anticipation. On stage, a makeshift panel. Karen at the center, flanked by 2 other board members. Regina sat next to us, leaning in to whisper, "Let's see how she spins this." Karen began with a speech, her trademark composure on full display. "We're here because of unfounded accusations by new residents. They claim I've misused HOA funds, a grave insult to my years of devoted service." Mutters of support mingled with skeptical looks from those who disliked her. "Let's address the facts," she said, summoning dramatic flourish. "Maplewood's finances are transparent. Our so-called evidence is just confusion over routine maintenance costs. This is a smear campaign by a family who continually breaks rules and now faces eviction." I felt anger surge. Regina stood, requesting time to respond. Karen, cornered, had to yield the microphone. Regina presented the documented invoices, pointing out the shell companies receiving payment. "This isn't routine maintenance. Where's the proof of service? Why are multiple payments going to a single P.O. box in another state?" A hush fell. Karen's face flushed. She stammered something about private subcontractors, but the crowd sensed her unease. This was only the beginning of the night's revelations. Amid the tense silence, a small voice spoke up from the back. "I want to say something." Everyone turned to see Mrs. Anderson, the elderly neighbor who'd faced harassment over her husband's wheelchair ramp. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were resolute. She recounted their ordeal, how Karen threatened fines unless they removed the ramp. The crowd whispered in sympathy. Then a father of 3 chimed in, describing fines over unsanctioned children's toys in the front yard. Another mother described repeated citations for petty infractions that never seemed to apply to Karen's own property. One by one, neighbors stood, sharing experiences of intimidation, selective enforcement, suspicious fees, stories that mirrored ours. The tide was turning fast. People realized they weren't alone in their resentment. Karen tried to interrupt, gavel in hand. "Order! These personal anecdotes aren't relevant." But the board members next to her seemed unsettled. One even muttered, "They deserve to be heard." Tim nudged me gently, both of us amazed. All it took was one push for the rest of the community to break free of Karen's intimidation. Regina shot me a look. "We've got momentum. Let's use it." Karen, lips pressed tight, realized she was losing control. Regina pulled the final piece from our arsenal. A sworn affidavit from the anonymous finance committee member, stating how Karen personally approved questionable transfers. The room fell into shocked silence as she read. "I, redacted, have witnessed Karen Smith funneling HOA funds to unverified vendors. When I raised concerns, Karen threatened me with dismissal. These records show over $20,000 in questionable payouts this quarter alone." Karen's face went white. She stuttered, "Those are malicious lies." But people murmured, pointing at the displayed transaction logs. The atmosphere shifted from tension to outrage. Even the loyal board members exchanged uneasy glances. One said, "If these documents are real, we need a full audit." Karen tried to retort, but chaos erupted. Neighbors demanding answers, the board calling for an immediate investigation, voices accusing Karen of corruption. Tim squeezed my hand. We hadn't just saved ourselves from eviction, we'd ignited a rebellion. Karen stormed from the stage, caught in the cameras of local journalists who'd shown up. The final words we heard from her, shouted through the commotion, were, "You'll pay for this," directed at us. A part of me shuddered, but seeing the solidarity among neighbors was liberating. Now, it was only a matter of time before official consequences followed. In the days after the meeting, Maplewood's board scheduled an emergency vote to remove Karen from her position pending investigation. She fought tooth and nail, claiming defamation, forging alliances with a few remaining loyal supporters. But the evidence was too damning. The board voted her out with an overwhelming majority. An interim HOA head took over. Mrs. Connolly, a retired school principal known for fairness. Karen's finances were handed over to a forensic accountant. The local police even hinted at possible charges if fraud was confirmed. Meanwhile, Regina worked magic on our eviction case. With Karen dethroned, the violation notices lost their teeth. The new board quietly withdrew the motion to evict us. They invited us to stay and offered to waive prior fines. Tim and I, relieved, happily accepted. But the greatest shock came when we learned about Karen's personal situation. Rumors circulated that her lavish lifestyle had drained her savings. She was heavily in debt and had allegedly used HOA funds to cover personal shortfalls. If proven, her entire property could be on the line. We marveled at the twist. Karen had tried to evict us from our home. Now it seemed she might lose her own. A few weeks later, the local real estate grapevine buzzed. Karen's property was on the brink of foreclosure. Whispers said she defaulted on her mortgage months ago, scrambling to plug the gap with misappropriated HOA fees. If the foreclosure went through, she'd be forced to sell. Tim and I found the irony almost surreal. She'd terrorized us with fines and eviction threats, only to face eviction herself. Jake overheard us talking and asked if that meant Karen would move away. Wait. A glint of relief, maybe even excitement, flickered in his eyes. Part of me felt an odd pang of pity. Sure, Karen was a menace, but losing one's home is brutal. Still, after the stress and near eviction she inflicted on us, pity was overshadowed by a sense of cosmic justice. Regina called with an update. The forensic audit is ongoing. She's likely to face legal consequences for fraud. If the bank forecloses, her property could be sold at auction. I glanced at Tim. An idea was forming, wild and a bit vengeful, but definitely poetic. What if I trailed off. He finished for me. Buy her house. We stared at each other in amazement, the plan feeling both outrageous and incredibly fitting. It started as a half-joke. Buy Karen's house. But the more we thought about it, the more it seemed like an incredible final checkmate. If Karen was forced to sell at auction, the property might go below market value. Tim and I had some savings, plus a strong sense of justice fueling us. We discussed it with Regina. Legally, you can place a bid at the foreclosure sale, she confirmed. Morally, that's up to you. But given everything she's done, I doubt many would blame you. We weighed the pros and cons. We'd be investing a considerable sum. We'd also be stepping into personal territory, owning the property of someone who despises us. But there was no denying the satisfaction we'd feel. It wasn't purely revenge. We realized we could refurbish and rent it out or resell later. Maplewood was still a prime neighborhood, and ironically, Karen's own strict rules had kept the place immaculate. No code violations, no neglected yard. So we took the leap, quietly preparing finances and lining up a real estate agent who specialized in foreclosure auctions. We told no one except Regina and a close friend. If Karen heard about our plan, she might sabotage the sale. The stage was set for an unexpected twist in this saga. Foreclosure auctions aren't glamorous. A plain county office, a small group of investors, or curious onlookers. Tim and I arrived early, feeling a cocktail of nerves and excitement. We tried to appear inconspicuous, but our hearts hammered. Karen's house was listed as lot number 14. The opening bid was surprisingly low, reflecting her delinquent balance plus fees. A few people murmured about the property's potential. We recognized some local flippers eyeing it. When bidding began, the auctioneer rattled off terms in rapid-fire monotone. Tim raised his hand, offering the initial bid. Another investor chimed in, bumping it up by a few thousand. My stomach nodded as the price climbed. But we stuck to our limit. After several tense minutes of back and forth, it came down to us and one last competitor. Tim held my gaze. We had agreed on a ceiling price, and we were nearing it fast. But I nodded. He went one increment higher. Silence hovered. The auctioneer called, going once, going twice. No new bids emerged. Sold. It took me a moment to process. We had just purchased Karen's house. A surge of adrenaline ripped through me. This was it. We owned the very property from which Karen had terrorized the neighborhood. Word travels at lightning speed in Maplewood. We returned home from the auction and found a message on our answering machine. Karen, voice shaking with rage, you disgusting vultures, you have no right to buy my home. I'll fight this. I felt a shiver run down my spine. She must have heard from her lawyer or neighbors. My phone buzzed nonstop, texts from curious residents. Is it true you bought Karen's house? Some were cheering us on, while others were just stunned. Despite Karen's threats, the transaction was legally binding. The sale was final unless she could pay her arrears in a brief redemption period. But rumor said she was broke. Barring a miracle, she'd be forced to vacate. Part of me worried about retaliation. She was cornered, losing everything, and might lash out unpredictably. Tim and I considered stepping up security. Simple things like changing our door locks, installing cameras. Even Regina advised caution. When we took a drive past Karen's house a few days later, the place was dark, blinds drawn. No sign of movement. The once proud queen of Maplewood seemed to be hiding in shame. I couldn't tell if I felt triumph or uneasy sympathy. Probably both. About a week later, a moving sale sign appeared outside Karen's house. Residents whispered that she had no choice but to pack up. But it got messy. Some reported hearing her shouting at movers or throwing boxes in anger. One afternoon, I mustered courage to walk by. I saw Karen in the driveway, rummaging through a pile of items. Her gaze snapped up, and she marched over like a storm. "You think you've won?" she spat, voice trembling with fury. "I hope you choke on the mortgage payments." I took a calm breath. "Karen, I'm sorry things ended this way, but you attacked us first. Eviction threats, fines, everything. We just wanted to protect our home." Her eyes flashed. "Protect your home by stealing mine?" "It was an auction. Anyone could have bought it," I replied, trying not to sound triumphant. "We made a fair bid." She let out a bitter laugh. "You won't get rid of me that easily. I'll find a way back." I just stood there, unsure what else to say. The old me might have felt guilty, but I reminded myself, she brought this on herself. With that, I turned and left her to her fury. The next time we'd see that house, it would be ours to enter. On a bright, cool morning, the final redemption period expired. No last-minute miracles for Karen. The bank transferred the deed to our name. We had the keys in hand. Tim and I arrived at the vacant house with Jake, stepping onto the porch Karen once guarded with an iron fist. It was surreal opening the door to a space where we'd never been welcome before. The interior was mostly empty. She'd taken what she could, presumably. But a few boxes remained, random junk left behind. Jake ran upstairs, curious. "This room has a great view, Mom," he shouted from a window. I smiled, imagining a future occupant, maybe a nice family who wouldn't be bullied by an overbearing HOA head. We wandered from room to room, absorbing the irony. The house was in decent shape, well-maintained, thanks to Karen's obsession with rules. A part of me wanted to gloat, but mostly I felt relief. Her intimidation no longer hung over us like a cloud. Tim snapped a photo of us holding the keys. "A keepsake," he said. "Proof that we overcame it all." Yes, we had. Yet I still wondered what Karen was plotting, vowing to watch my back. You never know with someone who's lost everything. With Karen out of the picture, Maplewood felt like a different neighborhood. The new HOA leadership, under Mrs. Connolly, reviewed outdated rules and relaxed many. Parents let their kids play freely, unafraid of arbitrary fines. An air of cautious optimism spread as neighbors realized the tyranny had ended. As for Karen, rumors said she moved across town, renting a small apartment. Legal investigations into her finances continued. The last we heard, charges for fraud were likely but not confirmed. While we didn't celebrate her downfall, we were grateful the threat of eviction was gone. We decided to renovate Karen's old house. Tim joked about turning it into a community center 2.0. But realistically, we just planned some upgrades, maybe rent it out to a nice family or sell it to recoup our investment. One afternoon, while painting the living room, a neighbor named Sarah popped in to say hello. She thanked us. "You have no idea how relieved we all are. I can finally plant flowers without measuring them against some obscure rule." We laughed together, feeling a sense of unity that was missing before. Maplewood was finally living up to its sunny reputation. Just when we thought it was over, Karen reappeared, this time with a lawsuit. She filed a claim that we had purchased her property under duress, alleging we colluded with the bank to force her out. Regina called us promptly, exasperated. "It's nonsense. She's grasping at straws." Nevertheless, we had to respond legally. Court paperwork meant more stress, more reminders of the conflict we'd hoped to leave behind. "Can she drag this out for months?" Tim asked. Regina sighed. "Potentially. But her case is weak. You followed standard foreclosure procedures, and she was given the same chance as anyone to settle her mortgage." A hearing was scheduled. On the appointed day, we arrived at the courthouse, nerves swirling. Karen was there, flanked by a disheveled lawyer who seemed as sour as she was. Her claims were as expected. They targeted me. They manipulated the HOA. Regina calmly presented the evidence, the official auction listing, the escrow records, the publicly advertised sale. The judge listened intently. Then, in a crisp tone, the verdict. No evidence of collusion, dismissed with prejudice. Karen's face twisted in rage, fists clenched. The gavel fell. Just like that, her last-ditch attempt collapsed. Tim squeezed my hand, a final wave of relief washing over us. Standing outside the courthouse, I watched Karen slink away down the steps, shoulders hunched in defeat. A strange blend of triumph and sorrow welled up within me. She had caused us unimaginable stress, threatened to evict us, nearly cost us our home. And yet here we were, victorious, stable, even owners of the house she once lorded over. In the following weeks, the final puzzle pieces fell into place. The forensic audit confirmed Karen had misused HOA funds. Formal charges were filed. The new HOA board publicly thanked us for exposing the corruption. Neighbors rallied, offering support and kindness in ways we never expected. We decided to sell Karen's former house. When it closed, we used the profit to enhance our own home. A new patio, a better fence for Jake's safety, and a small backyard treehouse, symbolic of the freedom Karen once tried to stifle. Life returned to normal, but we never forgot the lesson. We learned the power of standing up for what's right, the importance of community solidarity, and the ironic justice that can emerge when bullies overplay their hand. Whenever I pass that house on Maple Lane, I remember the day Karen tried to evict us, and how fate had the final say when we bought her home instead. It's a story that still echoes in Maplewood, proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply ensuring you can live peacefully on your own terms.